Welcome back, sporting fans, to another spectacular episode of the Paint the Wall podcast. I, as always, am your host, Steve, and I am back this week, finally. It has been forever since I recorded, and I do apologize. Life happens, it's incredibly busy, and before you know it, it's August. Kind of wild how that works. But let's start with recapping all of the games that we've had since our last episode. First of all, we beat Houston 3-1. Which was a good win. But then we turned around and lost to LAFC 3-1. So kind of a bad loss. We then followed that up with another loss to FC Dallas, 4-2 this time. But then we did get a win over Charlotte, 2-1 win over Charlotte. Mason Toye in the 93rd minute to tie it, and then Dejan Joveljic with a 96-minute game winner, which is fantastic because we never get stoppage time goals. We've talked ad nauseum over our 3 seasons about how in this podcast about how we never get stoppage time goals. So kind of cool to finally get one, especially for a winner. Joveljic did have a tight hammy after that game. Actually, right after that goal, he came up kind of holding his hamstring. He did end up playing in the next game, but he has since made a return, so seems he's fine. We then played RSL, and that one was to a 1-1 draw. Of course, RSL's one goal was scored by none other than Johnny Russell. Who else would have scored it? And of course, naturally, he scores it in front of the cauldron. But Johnny, in the true class that only Johnny can have, no celebration, just a hands up. A lot of respect for the home crowd. Gotta love to see that. Can't wait to see him on the wall someday. But then Eric Tommy ties it with a absolute blast of a goal in the 59th minute. Fantastic. One other thing of note from this game, Jake Davis, two yellows for a red card after only playing for 22 minutes. So it does seem as though we have our replacement for Red Card Roger. It will be Jake Davis. He will continue apparently to get tons and tons of red cards. And I'm fine with it because he plays hard, and what more can you ask for? But then fast forward to the 4th of July here in the beautiful state of Colorado, where I reside. I was finally able to make it to a sporting game, although it had to be an away game here in Colorado. And we got a 2-1 victory over the Colorado Rapids. This is the first victory in a decade. Yes, a decade at Dick's Sporting Goods Park. I assume the only thing I can think of is it's because our team is always asleep because the stadium is boring as hell. Let me tell you, it's a terrible stadium. But we did manage to get a win there. A pretty hard fought win. They had a ton of shots. Pulse Camp really came up clutch in several different moments to keep us in the game and ultimately keep us ahead. Great game and a great win. But then we went back to our losing form, and we dropped one 2-3 to Seattle this past weekend. We did score 2 to kind of start a comeback, but weren't able to get the third one in. We did give up a penalty on a Daniel Shallowy handball. So if he just keeps his arm down, we get a point. Really kind of frustrating, but it just feels like that's what it's like to be a sporting fan these days. Really kind of a bummer, but what are you going to do? That pretty much brings us up to speed on the games. I do kind of want to discuss a few things about these games and some other topics of note since we haven't had an episode in a while. I'd like to kind of sit and discuss a few things, but I feel like I kind of want somebody to talk these things through. That's right, it's a guest host episode. But before we bring in our guest host for this episode, I have exciting news. We have a sponsor. I can't even believe it myself, but yes, we have a sponsor. And I think I'm going to kick it to Past Steve to introduce this sponsor. Past Steve, take it away. Yes, thank you, Future Steve. We are, in fact, sponsored by Focus Fuel, which is a clean, flavorful energy boost in a tasty, convenient gummy. Perfect for powering your day without coffee or energy drinks. You get a smooth energy from green tea and guarana, It enhances your focus and mental clarity, also gives you fuel and hydration from electrolytes. My personal favorite is the fruit punch, but they do come in blue raspberry, lemonade, watermelon, fruit punch. They also come in green apple, peach, and strawberry lemonade. You can check out their sample packs, 3 packs like I showed you here, 6 gummies each for $20. But better still, you can use the link in our description for 10% off of your order. What a great deal. Back to you, future Steve. Thank you, past Steve. So excited to have our first sponsor. Definitely check out that link below and try out those awesome gummies. Now, let's bring in this week's co-host. He is making his second appearance on the Paint the Wall podcast, the president of Front Range Sporting Supporters Club and secretary and social media chair for the South Stand Supporters Club, Ryan Niziolek. Ryan.
Thanks for having me back, Steve.
Thanks Appreciate for joining us again, man.
Absolutely.
Such a fun time. We had a good time at the July 4th game.
Yes,
we were supposed to record there, but my life is busy, and I always have to cancel things. So, what are you going to do?
Life happens, man. Life happens.
Yeah. But I appreciate you coming on with me today to do this one. I have a few things that I wanted to talk about. I mentioned in the first part of the video, I have a few things that I wanted somebody to talk with me about things, so I'm not just talking to a camera. So we'll just dive right into them. What do you say?
Let's have at it.
The first thing I wanted to talk about, we can't have a sporting podcast without talking about Johnny F. and Russell and his return to Children's Mercy. Were you weren't at that game, were you?
I was not at the game. I was able to watch from Colorado.
Right. I couldn't remember if you happened to be in, I think Logan, our old co-host, was at that game, I believe. Maybe that's what I'm thinking of. But either way, I was told that he got a pretty good ovation during warm-ups, which is nice. I'm glad nobody's holding it against him that he isn't on the squad anymore. So that's kind of nice.
I think some people are holding it against him, but at the same time, they're not upset about it.
Sure. And of course, I called it before the game. Of course he scores against us.
Naturally.
That's just, of course he does. I fully expected Willie Agata to score also. I was like, Willie's going to score first, and then Johnny's going to score the game winner, and we're going to lose this game 2-1. It just felt like that's what was going to happen. So thankfully, we pull off a 1-1 draw in that game, and we only give up the 1 goal to Johnny. But absolute class from Johnny by not celebrating after the goal. Just kind of hands up and acknowledging. Absolute class there.
Absolutely.
But he was quoted after the game. He was asked about SKC moving on from him, and his quote was, "I didn't think it was the right decision. I still don't." Those are some strong words. I'm curious if you agree.
I can see where he's coming from. I mean, he was our captain for the last few years. He has been there through thick and thin for SKC, and I don't think that he wanted to leave. I think it was more of a club and front office decision. He costs a lot and doesn't play a lot. He's kind of injury prone. And I don't think that it wasn't a fit for both sides. Even though both sides wanted it, it came down to numbers, and I don't think it was a fit in the long run.
That's a good points. None of which had I really thought of. I kind of just heard that, and I immediately was like, I agree. I didn't know why we got rid of him from the beginning, because he was out of contract, so I figured he would have been fairly cheap to re-sign. It seemed fairly obvious that he wanted to stay. So it just did. That one didn't make him and Tim Melia were the two that didn't make sense to me. I had no problem with any other moves, but him and Tim Melia didn't make sense to me. I feel like this season so far I've been proven wrong with Pulskamp. He at the beginning of the season I wasn't, but recently in the last month he's been absolutely insane. So I guess I was wrong about that. He clearly just needed some games to get used to it, but
Yeah,
Johnny,
he
I don't
needed.
know. I didn't think that we would that getting rid of Johnny was the right move, but
I think it was, like I said, I think it was a more of a front office collaboration with Johnny himself and coming to an agreement on both sides. Where you look at a couple years ago, Zusi and Roger took massive, massive pay cuts, and they were locker room guys. I was hoping at least for one more year of Johnny being the locker room guy,
mm-hmm.
like Espinosa and Zusi were, but it ended up not working out on both sides.
Yeah, and maybe he wanted to start too, and maybe that was part of it. He didn't want to be just a locker room presence. I kind of had said that right after they cut him, but or didn't re-sign. I guess I should say. I don't think they
Yeah.
technically cut him, but I don't know. Then I read that quote, and I'm like, maybe he was okay with being a locker room guy, but who knows? Those are things that will never be there. We'll never know.
Yeah, but at the same time, look at how, quote unquote, how long it took to be signed by another team.
True, that's a good point.
So, it maybe there's other talks with other teams, and between the money and everything else, it wasn't going to happen with SKC again. But another team was able to come to a consensus that worked for both sides. He hasn't been starting, not a ton of minutes, but I hate saying it, he still has been impactful for RSL. He could have been that guy for us as well.
Yeah, that's a good point. It did take forever for them to sign him. He has been fairly impactful for them since he started playing. I mean, he came in and kind of started relatively quickly. I'm trying to look up real quick. I don't know what his stats are on the season, but I'm curious how many goals he has. One against us, again. Go figure.
Yeah, I think he's on 3 or 4 this season so far.
Yeah, they are still ahead of us in the rankings by 1. They've got 2 more points than we do. Losing this last weekend doesn't help, but what are you going to do? Johnny Russell, He's got 2 goals. 2 goals, and he has 2 goals, but he's tied for second on their entire team.
Yeah.
So Diego Luna, of course, has 8 goals, but then there's 3 people tied with 2 goals. So they're not really spreading out the scoring very much on their end.
They
are not. Any assists? Johnny Russell has no assists, so just the 2 goals. But what are you going to do? That's just kind of the story of it. It's sad because he's such a club legend, and I think he will be. He's already a figurative club legend, but I think he will eventually be an actual, literal club legend. Eventually, but I guess it depends. If he goes and wins a cup with RSL, that'll be a little harder to put him on our wall.
Yeah, a little bit.
But all right, you got anything else on Johnny, or you want to move on to this next player?
Let's go move on.
All right. I want to talk a little bit about Ian James. Now, he, of course, is our new, I think he's 19, I believe, 19-year-old center back. He got his first start a couple games ago, and he looked really good in his last start. Since then, he has subbed in the last 2 games, so he didn't get starts after that one, which is kind of confusing because he had a really good start and then went back to a sub. So kind of weird. But being that he's a homegrown, I'm curious what your opinions are on Ian James so far.
I like him. Minimal. He came in, I think it was maybe 10, 15 minutes. The next game he started. Like Jansen Miller in the beginning of the season, there's a lot of really good center back in him. He's got a good taste for the game. He's still young, so yeah, there's some tactical errors. But overall, just his tenacity, the speed, the willingness to, get back and defend hard. He's made a lot of really smart plays compared to some of the not so smart plays. If you look at the ratio, especially at his young age at center back, where typically you're looking, mid to late 20s being, a good staple center back in MLS. And as young as he is, being 17 years old, I think he's second youngest player to start a game for SKC next to Busio.
That sounds right.
And, as a center back at that young age, which kind of plays into, between him, Folder, even though he's out for, the next few weeks or so, and Jansen Miller, that young center back trio that we have, a little bit of good depth that still needs to learn, but has gotten some starts, gotten some minutes. I think that we could, hopefully, knock on wood, be looking at a, Matt Beasler, Iko Para type center back pairing that could be a center back pairing for the next few plus years.
Yeah, I would agree. And I know the last 2 games, it looks like our starting lineup has been Joaquin Fernandez and Jansen Miller, which Joaquin didn't really look good at the beginning of the season. So I think he picked up another injury there for a little bit and was out for a while, and which probably is why Ian got the start. So I don't know. I guess that would be my next question. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, I believe that Fernandez came back from injury, instantly picked up yellow card suspension.
That's right.
Accumulation. So he was suspended, and that's why Ian James got the start. And Ian James looked good. Yeah, he's young. He'll make mistakes, but until you get minutes, you're not going to learn as much as you can in a game than you will in training, kind of thing. Yeah. Where Joaquin Fernandez, again, we talked about it before. I don't hate him, but at the same time, being a senior guy playing over in Europe, I think he can be tactically reckless. He can play a little too far forward. Weirdly enough, he can get wide where on that side, Tim Leibold will end up, they'll almost switch between being fullbacks and center backs, positional wise. But then technically they'll play their actual position, but leave the wings wide open.
Yeah, those are good points. And I don't know, how do you feel about this pairing or throw Joaquin in for the rest of this season, and we've got kind of a triangle kind of going on. How do you feel about it? You think it's working?
I think that it's working a lot better than I expected, especially with Jansen Miller being as young as he is, coming out of the draft, Ian James being super young, coming up through SKC2, looking as good as he is. Obviously with Volder out, I'm going to guess until maybe right before playoff type season. It works, especially if Jansen Miller's kind of playing that more deeper center back, especially all of the freaking goal line clearances that he has had this season, which has been insane.
Yeah.
I think that it works for now. I think Fernandez is someone that, especially given his pay, that he's someone that could easily be moved on from. Possibly get someone a little more moldable and, less bad habits kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree with all that. I also love the fact that Jansen's also young. So, if that pans out, especially if the pairing ends up being Jansen and Ian, they're both so young that's like, cool. Now we've got this center pillar at center back forever, essentially. For quite some time, that
for the next 10 years.
Yeah. Yeah. That would be insane to be able to just lock that in, especially given our last, 3-4 years of just revolving door at center back, it seems like.
Yeah.
Where we get flashes from people that look good. And, we still have Robbie Volodare coming back when he gets back. Yeah. He's also been incredibly talented. So then we're kind of looking at ending the season with 4 rotational pieces at center back that are pretty good, as long as Joaquin can kind of keep up. I think that's a great position to be in a position that we have struggled with the last few years. So,
absolutely.
And then I know another end that we've talked about a lot, which brings me to the next point. Kerry Zavagnin, our interim head coach, not anybody who listens to this should know who I'm
Yeah.
talking about, but you never know. He had stated that he really wants to have Joveljic, Shappy, Manu, and Santi Munoz all on the field at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that has to come with a formation change, which we did see a formation change this past weekend against Seattle. We actually kind of saw like 3 or 4 different formations during this game, but our starting lineup was a 4-2-3-1. Although not with those 4 people all on the field at the same time. So, but I guess before we kind of dive into the formation, I guess, or in tandem with the formation, do you think that's possible even to have all those players on the field at the same time? And what does that look like, in your mind?
I absolutely do think that it can be. Shappy is definitely a right winger. Santi and Daniel, for example, they've been on the field at the same time, mm-hmm. and they have the ability to switch left and right. Mm-hmm. So I do think that, say as a rotational squad where, Daniel needs some rest, Santi on the left side, Shappy on the right, obviously Joveljic up front, and Manu at the 10. Where does that leave Eric? I mean, you can bring Eric in as the 8, Manu as the 10, and Bartlett at the 6. So, I mean, that brings in kind of all of the people outside of Daniel that are kind of that front side from midfield up. The other stuff or the other thought is, if, Shappy can play in the middle, he's obviously better down the right-hand side where, guy's kind of a bulldog. If he drops back down to that 8 and, plays instead of Tommy at that 8 position, kind of, slotted behind Manu. I don't know what that would exactly look like, because definitely Manu likes to play a little further back for a 10. Shappy definitely likes to be up in that right wing, and, who knows what it could be. It could look different where, maybe Manu drops into that 8 position and Shappy's playing kind of more of a traditional 10 position, but still that 8 role, just kind of flopping the side of the midfield. But in general, I definitely think it could happen. The easiest, not even a formation change in reality, but Santi play on the left side where Daniel plays, and, if it's not working, one side or the other is getting stopped, and you swap Shappy and Santi to, from left to right, right to left, we've seen it all the time. So I don't think that is out of the possibility.
Yeah. And I think that's kind of, it fits with one of those good problems to have kind of thing, where it's like, how do we have all these players that can play? How do we get all these players onto the field? Two things that I kind of find interesting from that and from everything you said is Zavagnan's quote. He's talking about Joveljic, Shappy, Manu, and Santi. Shallowy's not mentioned in there, which for somebody who's so important or has been in the past to this club, that's interesting. I don't know if now that he could have left him out because he's saying, well, Shallowy's obviously a starter. I'm not counting him because I'm talking about other than Shallowy. How do I get all these people in? Maybe that's what he meant, but maybe that's not what he meant. Shallowy is our second leading goal scorer right now. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, he's got 5.
Yep.
Tommy's got 4, and then believe it or not, Santi's got 3. He's number 4 on our team already. So
with minimal minutes,
that's crazy. Yeah, he only got 9 games. He's only played in 9 games, and he's got 3 goals already. So that's exciting. The other kind of to the formation point, and we did have the different formation against Seattle. I actually got to watch that game live, so I got to listen to the announcers, which I never get to do. But they were talking about how it seemed like we switched to this 4-2-3-1. So we had the double pivot with Basong and Manu. And we had to do that because Bartlett was out. Yeah. And I think that is a fascinating statement to say about a 19-year-old. Like we had to switch formations and put in 2 different players to cover one 19-year-old's normal role. That says a ton about Jacob Bartlett, I think.
Oh, it absolutely does. I mean, Memo could have gone in and played the 6. Radoya was on the bench. He could have played the 6. but just coming back off injury, I think they're still trying to bring him back into the fold.
Mm-hmm.
And again, another player that is costing SKC a lot of money right now, that with Bartlett, even at his young age, got to move on from Rudoya, in my opinion. Don't hate him, but costs way too much for the production and the amount of time he has spent on the bench with injury.
I agree. And I think he will be gone at the end of the year. I understand why they kept him at the beginning of this year, because obviously we didn't know what Bartlett. So I don't know how I forget a name that we've literally been talking about for 5 minutes, but we didn't know what we had with Bartlett. Obviously, he had never played. Manu had never played for us, so we didn't know what we were looking at in terms of them. So now I think it's very clear that Rudoya will be gone at the end of this season. We don't really need him, or he'll be back on a significantly cheaper pay.
Yeah.
But even at that, I wouldn't pay him, because we've still got Memo. We've got Basong, who can clearly play midfield. So we have our starters. We have 2 for sure, maybe even 3 that could easily start. And then we also have 2 on the bench that can fill in at any time. So I don't see any reason to keep on to Rudoya. But
nope, I completely agree. Kind of the same thing with Rosero. Love him to death. He's good, but he's gotten more injury prone.
Yep.
Older, costs a lot of money, slower. Kind of all of the negative things for our center backs compared to what we obviously have between Folder, James, and Miller.
Yeah,
even Fernandez.
Yeah, good problems to have as long as everybody keeps developing. If we hit a wall with really any of these players, that's gonna be a bad thing. Like that, then that puts us in a scenario where we're like, well, now we don't have that, or if Joaquin hits a wall and Jansen Miller's out on an injury, even next year or something like that, just sometime in the future. Now we're like, well, now we only have 2 center backs and nobody really to fill in. So, but that could happen with any lineup. So you can't really put too much emphasis on that, I don't think.
Agreed.
But I do like the lineup change from Seattle. I kind of figured if he's going to be getting Santi and Joveljic on the field, we're probably looking at more of a 4-4-2 or something like that. It probably would line up more like a 4-1-3-2 if Bartlett's back, because he really does stay back. He doesn't push forward as much. But essentially, it's just a diamond 4-4-2 basically. Which I'm fine. That's literally the first formation I learned in soccer, and what I played. Pretty much every high school, I feel like, plays a 4-4-2 diamond. So, why not kick it back old school? I don't know, but I like the idea of almost playing kind of a fluid. Like there's a formation, but it's really fluid, and we move around a lot, and it doesn't. We don't have to, the Ted Lasso way in the last season of Ted Lasso.
Exactly.
We're kind of playing that way, except for hopefully they don't need the red strings. But
no red strings.
Yeah. All right, one more player I kind of want to ask about, because I had high hopes for this player going into the season, and so far, absolutely nothing has happened. So I'm curious to get your thoughts on why this is happening, and that is Steven Afrifa.
I think that Kerry has been using him more of not even really using him, but he's become kind of a bench player because he is more of a winger and striker. Having Joveljic, having Munoz, having Shappy, having Eric for that right side in the striker positions, he's just he's been outplayed. Outside of, maybe he's lost his stride in training or attitude, locker room stuff. Who knows? I think that he's still there for the game. He's still there for the club. So I would imagine that he has just been outstepped and out-trained and outplayed by other players. Another young kid that, in that attacking mindset that just has been outplayed.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I think it's also, we have, we have a lot of players that can fill in there. Even from the bench, we've got Mason Toy's been playing a lot recently, and has scored a couple goals in some pretty big moments, at least one for sure. We just have other players that feels like they can come in and they can contribute. So maybe it's kind of a combo of both. We've got other players, but they're also outworking him in practice. And I mean, not outworking. I can't speak to his work ethic. He's probably got a great work ethic, but maybe they're just performing better and they're their preferred spot. They're their preferred sub in that situation. But I just find it surprising because he showed so much promise last year, and I really thought he was going to take off this year, especially with the players we did lose. But it just hasn't materialized.
Going back to Johnny, I think if we had kept Johnny and we didn't get Shappy, we would have been seeing a lot more Frifa on that right wing.
That's probably true, especially because if we don't get Shappy, we also don't have Manu.
Yeah.
So we'd be down two pretty key players that are playing important roles here. So that's a good point. Yeah, if we had Johnny that's a good point. But I guess it's just weird how little things like that could just change everything,
Oh yeah.
But I don't know. I guess we've
been.
Who
knows?
Sorry, go ahead.
Maybe he'll. I was gonna say maybe Freefield will. Do a Kyrie Shelton and go back to right back.
Maybe
just to get some time.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, we don't really have. We have Kyrie at right back now, and Jake obviously can play there, but he's been playing midfield. Other than that, it's like Andrew Brody comes off the bench. I'm not a huge fan of him, so it's like maybe Steven does need to do that. I don't know if he's big enough, but Kyrie gets worked off of every ball that's kicked at him, so I don't know. I don't think that's necessarily a problem. So that's the one negative I still have about Kyrie Shelton is it feels like he gets worked off of every ball that he gets challenged on. I'm like, you're so big. How is this happening every single time?
I agree. Agreed.
What are you going to do? But all right, well, that's pretty much all I have. You got anything for us this week?
I don't. Outside of the way that the last basically since Kerry has come in as interim, I have a feeling that even though the next 6-7 games it's definitely a rough stretch. They're every team is above the playoff line, but I mean, look at the way that we played against Charlotte. Look at the way that we come back against fourth in the West Seattle this last weekend. I think if we can really get some things figured out in that first half, that we're going to be a playoff team. Might be a number 9 have to play in, but I think that the way that things have been since Kerry took over, that we're going to be a playoff team.
Yeah. That I actually was going to ask that question. I was going to look because we're sitting at 12th right now, 23 points. Playoff line at 9 is at 27, so we're only 4 points back. Losing that Seattle game really kind of hurt, but what are you going to do? I was going to see how you thought about. We've got New York City FC, Vancouver, San Diego, Orlando, Seattle all coming up, and then Colorado again to wrap up August in Kansas City this time. I was going to ask if you think we end up making the playoffs, but you already answered it.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, I think we will end up making the playoffs, even if we're number 9 and we got to vie for that play-in spot. Some of the teams that are coming up in the next 5-6, they've kind of been slumping. Vancouver's been slumping a little bit. It'll be interesting to see how their injury setup looks. Some of the other teams, they've been slumping as well. So, who knows? Maybe we're on the rise and they're getting their feet wet a little more during the summer break and having a hard time coming back from it.
Yeah.
Knock on wood.
We have, right. We have the three teams that are between us and the playoffs right now. We still have one more game against each of them, Real, Austin, and Houston. So we have opportunities to beat them, including Houston is our last game of the season on October.
Yeah.
So that'll be our D-Day game. Very likely it could come down to that game. It could be a must-win on D-Day. Nothing better than that.
No.
So we can hope that would happen. That'd be cool. I mean, honestly, I hope we make the playoffs before then, but I don't hate the idea of it coming down to win and we're in. kind of situation, especially if San Diego's pretty far ahead. Minnesota's 2 points behind them. Top three are kind of far apart, so those three could start to kind of slide towards the end of the year. And it's all about when you get hot, and if we can get hot towards the end of the season going into the playoffs, that could spell for a good run for us, you know?
Yeah, it could.
So, who knows? Well, Ryan, I appreciate you taking some time to sit down with me and discuss some sporting stuff. I always enjoy having you on.
Always, man, always. And thanks for having me on again.
Yeah, of course. We'll definitely have you on again. All you guys, I appreciate the support from you guys. I appreciate all the listens and all that kind of stuff. Until next time, be kind to one another. I'll see you guys next time.
Go Sporting.